Okay, we'll call the regular meeting of council for October 13th, 2020 to order at 3 p.m. on the nose. And just so that everybody knows, this is our last Zoom meeting where we're all separated. The next meeting, we will be back in council chambers. We've got the separation dividers and everything put into place. We will still be looking to video record these meetings and have them live on YouTube. So I know there's been a lot of people that have quite enjoyed having these on YouTube, and I think it's important that we try to keep it going forward because it's we've all learned how to make it work quite well, but there will be a learning curve as how getting everything working in council chambers is going to be a bit of a challenge on a couple ends too, but we'll keep working on it until we get it. So it won't be perfect day one, but nothing is. So the adoption of the agenda, I'm going to add one item, being item number 8.4, which is a donation to the High River District Hospital Foundation for discussion and decision. So I will ask Councillor Kinghorn for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended for the regular meeting of council October 13th.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'll give you that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? By consensus. Carried. As for a motion that council adopt, as for a motion from Councillor Cooey, that council adopt the regular meeting of council minutes from September 28th as presented.
Mayor Snodgrass, I just noticed something that needs to be added on the minutes is that with you being absent, usually they have a excused with the person who's absent, and you weren't listed at all.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Got that, Kara?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
I will give you that with the amendment, that motion with the amendment.
Thank you. All in favor, consensus? Carried. Public comments, Kara, is there any?
There are no public comments.
Thank you. So we'll move right into the public hearing on the Good Neighbor Bylaw. So this public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M26, and amendments thereto. I hereby declare the public hearing relating to Bylaw 4579/2020 now open at 3:03 p.m.
The purpose of Bylaw 4579/2020 is to promote responsible and respectful behavior among persons within High River. The public hearing was advertised on the town's website and social media pages, as well as in the High River Times on Friday, October 2nd, and in the October 9th edition of the Town Crier, as required by the Public Notification Bylaw.
Following rules of conduct will be followed during this public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point, should be limited to 5 minutes in length. All speakers must state their name and address prior to presenting. The order will be protective services, those supporting, those opposing, and any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation. For clarification, there will be no debating the bylaw, and respect for staff, council, and the public will be maintained at all times. So I will hand this over to protective services, please. There's Peter.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass and council. Sharing Jessica's computer at the moment. So for the record, my name is Peter Jenner. I'm the manager.
We can barely hear you, Peter.
Oh, sorry. How's that?
It's a little better.
A little better? Okay.
Yep.
I'll try to speak up, but let me know if I need to repeat anything. So for the record, my name is Peter Jenner. I'm the manager of emergency management and protective services. As you know, we have been working on the Good Neighbor Bylaw for quite some time. That involved research of other municipalities, reviewing our current bylaws, and also extensive public engagement that was done in 2019. Through that process, the information is summarized in your cover sheet, and I'll just touch on a couple areas. The Good Neighbor Bylaw is generally a consolidation of 3 primary bylaws, which are the noise bylaw, snow and ice control, and unsightly properties. We've also included some other bylaws or other areas, and added some new areas that have come together in the Good Neighbor Bylaw as an overarching bylaw for High River. And then a couple of weeks ago, the Good Neighbor Bylaw went to council for first reading, which brings us to the public hearing today. Happy to hear any questions. At this point, administration hasn't had any other comments.
Okay, questions from council. Councillor McMillan first.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you very much, Peter. I just couldn't find in this version the component about graffiti. And I don't know if because I know we had talked about that back and forth at first reading, but I just was wondering I couldn't find it for some reason.
So for graffiti, no, it's a good question, Councillor McMillan. The graffiti we included in combination for under unsightly properties and nuisance. So from a definition standpoint, we referred it more under the premises and property and addressing it there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. I'm in favor of the bylaw, and maybe this isn't related specifically to this point, but more to the enforcement side. I mean, this is nice. We've called it the Good Neighbor Bylaw. We hope that our community would all work together to resolve issues and have some common respect and responsibility for property and behavior. But we know sometimes that's not the case, right? Like, let's be honest. So when we come to bylaws, for me, it's always about enforcement. So the enforcement part of all of this piques my interest or has me concerned, because the fact that bylaws are complaint driven. So maybe my comments aren't so much about this particular bylaw, which I support, and I like all the work that you've done in it. But it's more, I guess, talking about our bylaw enforcement and how we would go ahead with that in the future. So sorry, it's not really directed at this bylaw, but more so all bylaws and how we would enforce them and how we would go forward in those particularly challenging situations where there's been numerous complaints given and no resolution. I know we always want to resolve things in an amicable way between parties. Sometimes that's not possible. So I guess I'm looking at how do we bring the heavy hand, I guess, when we need to this. Not that I think we have an inherent amount of problems in our community at all, but on occasion there needs to be something that's stronger. And my challenge with bylaws is that they're complaint driven, and sometimes it's difficult to resolve a situation without some teeth behind it. Like I said, Peter, I don't know if there's an answer to that. It's just a comment in general when we start to tackle things like this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Nychuk. No, I think that's a very fair question, and I think it's most appropriate for this particular bylaw being a good neighbor bylaw. Some of our other bylaws, such as traffic, have very specific things that are easy to enforce around the Traffic Safety Act and those aspects. A good neighbor bylaw is really about, we've set sort of that expectation we have of citizens in the community and outlined it in the bylaw and what we expect. What I anticipate from an enforcement standpoint is that this would be the type of bylaw that would require probably a significant amount of education and communication with complainants and then citizens that are considered maybe the violators of the bylaw, and oftentimes they probably are unaware that there is a bylaw around a particular issue, and it's really about working with those citizens, and oftentimes, and maybe just between neighbors and working through it with them. So I suspect from an enforcement standpoint is this one will have a little bit heavier effort component of public education and working with residents and citizens in High River before we move to the next steps of enforcement. That there are ways that we will be able to enforce it as the bylaw is written, that it has left us room to enforce, such as something around noise complaint out of the prescribed hours or an unsightly property. But those would be the kind of our second and third steps in the enforcement process, where public education and communicating and drawing a better understanding of the bylaw would be done first.
So just to follow up to that, then, if we're going to premise this on education, what, how many strikes do you get in an education scenario? Where's the point? Is the bylaw officer educated then on the point of when to take it to next steps? Is it a case-by-case scenario then, as far as that would go?
Usually it's, and I know some situations can vary. More than likely, it's a one-time education. So, for instance, if you didn't shovel your sidewalk, there's an education explaining the bylaw for that understanding and why the bylaw is in place. But if that continued on, you wouldn't get education each time that it's snowed. You've been informed, it's recorded that you've been notified. So there is an expectation that you would clear that sidewalk, unless there's extenuating circumstances, but that would be part of that investigation.
Sure, awesome. Thank you, Peter, appreciate it.
Okay.
Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks, Peter. Again, I know a lot of work has gone into this. Just a little further to what Councillor Nychuk had said, because portions of this bylaw are somewhat subjective, both by the complainant, by the person being complained upon, and also by bylaw. And so I just wanted to also ensure that there's enough parameters or guidelines for bylaw to work forward and enforce it, and they're comfortable with it. So I appreciate your comments. When we look at lawn and yards, I didn't see any reference to alleys. And I would have to guess that alleyways butting up to fences and yards are probably some of the biggest complaints or the cause of some major complaints. Any response regarding that, Peter?
Thank you, Councillor Cooey. Are you referring to such as like an unsightly property?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So alleyways, We haven't concentrated on that, and yeah, we do understand that that can be an eyesore, or it can become overgrown, or it becomes a storage location. More so, that'll be managed probably from a safety standpoint, and that is not impacting neighbors or that alleyway. From an unsightly standpoint, it's primarily from the frontage that we see, but we're also understanding that alleyways and backyards and along fence lines will have to be monitored for safety and issues that we may run into as well. Does that answer your question?
It answers it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Nix. Why don't you go on to somebody else for a minute and come back to me?
Not everybody's happy with that answer.
Hit mute. Councillor Masterman.
Makes me want to get a dog, Councillor Cooey. So I like this bylaw, and I like kind of the intent of the bylaw, and even the name of the bylaw. Somebody, one of our upstanding citizens asked me the other day, so good neighbor bylaw, like why is it called the good neighbor bylaw? So I kind of, I said because it's trying to instill, pride of community, pride of neighborhood, respect for your fellow resident, and all that. I felt like I should break out into a chorus of kumbaya, but I just to go back to Councillor McMillan's question about graffiti. I appreciate that it's in a different section. Does the word graffiti, and pardon me, I didn't see it, but that's not to say it's not there. But does the word graffiti appear?
It does. It appears in under our definitions. So we define graffiti means uninvited markings that have been made on any premise or property without permission of the owner. Okay. And yes, keep it fairly generalized that way.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did see that under definition. I'm just wondering, without a context, like in the actual meat of the bylaw, under any of the provisions, without that context, I'm just wondering if the average resident, or like I couldn't figure out, kind of where it sort of fits in, and I'm sorry I didn't really ask about this when we were in the earlier stages of this thing, but I guess I just worry a little bit that residents won't really know, where that fits, or if it fits. Yes, it's in the definitions, but there isn't really any further context. So thanks, Peter.
Fair enough. Yeah, because this one's fairly new for us, it might take a little bit to stick handle this one in the community.
No other hands are up. So, Councillor Cooey. Oh yeah, we got to go back to you. Dog's done. So.
For now. Sorry about that. So over the last week or so, just talking to some residents about this bylaw and appreciating that it's coming forward. There's been a lot of comments about, I think that we've all experienced a quieter neighborhood, in particular neighborhoods, and in particular over the last 7 months, and that's slowly picking up. But how much they enjoyed the quietness of our neighborhoods, and I thought that was an interesting perspective as we kind of loosen up on some of our noise issues. And the one area that I hadn't really thought of is when we talked about residential snow removal, and I'm curious what Peter and what the rest of council's feedback are. I guess in my mind, I was thinking a shovel. And one of the residents that reached out to me indicated a lot of snow blowers in their neighborhood. And I'm just curious as to kind of the intent or the feedback from others if you were thinking the same thing, if there's a concern, or if we're purely, you know, as I pointed out, our concern is to get our sidewalks clear of snow and ice, so there's for safety's sake. And sometimes that might mean firing up a snow blower in the morning. I'm just curious what other people's feedback or thoughts were on that, because like I said, I had fully in my mind had a shovel in my mind. So
Are you asking?
I was the only one.
Chime in? You want asking for council to chime in?
Yeah, or Peter, whoever. I was just curious that.
Well, in my opinion, if you're within the boundaries of the noise timelines, then fire up your snow blower. I don't know. Isn't that what it's for?
The new bylaw has no timeline, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. So the new time in the new in this bylaw for snow removal specifically, we allowed an exemption to allow snow removal, and we weren't specific about that. So that could include snow blowers, leaf blower type of device, or shovels. And so this one, we administration did go back and forth on this one several times. We recognize that the industrial areas and commercial areas in the community required more flexibility for snow removal for their parking lots, specifically schools and so on, that require snow removal usually in the middle of the night before they have any vehicles parked in those parking lots. And commercial businesses are the same, and that's pretty common in most communities. With High River, in the fact that it's a small community, and the commercial and schools and industrial are very close to or within residential areas. So the feeling was that if we're going to allow the snow removal at any time for businesses, that maybe we also allow that for residents throughout the community. And this was similar to where Calgary went with their changes with their bylaw, allowing snow removal after a snow event. That way it gets cleared out. But the side from that you've recognized is that it will, there is that chance that it'll cause some frustration for residents with the noise at night.
Yeah, it's a challenge because I agree with the way you've gone with this. Just going back to Councillor Cooey asking for feedback, I agree with the way you're going about this, because some of us have to get that done prior to going to work, right? Or else it's going to sit there all day. So yeah, I think you just have to be like the good neighbor bylaw, just be respectful of who's around you. I don't know if 3 o'clock in the morning is a good time to be firing it up, but I don't know how many will be. But you know, if you got to do it at 6:30, I think 6 or 6:30, you fire it up and get it done so the thing's cleared for your community when you're gone all day. So I don't know, I like it, but Peter, I'm going to ask on this whole unsightly premise and unsightly properties thing. We've got a couple of gems in town right now that a big one that's on 5th Avenue and 2nd Street. And when I look at this bylaw, I'm just wondering how much what we have for clarity and teeth in this thing. When first, under the definition of unsightly, it's in respect of a structure, includes the actual structure itself, whose exterior shows signs of significant physical deterioration, so the structure itself. And in respect of land, includes land that shows signs of serious disregard for general maintenance of the land itself. So what if it's just a whole bunch of crap stored on the front lawn that's just sitting there? It's old desks and dishwashers, and you go over there, and Bylaw should be going over there and having a look at it because it's horrendous. And it gets worse, but it's, in lawns and yards, I guess is where it would fit into. And all it says is remove any yard waste from their premises. But this isn't what I would call yard waste. It's garbage. Like it's junk that should be either at the dump or the salvage center. So like yard waste, I think, okay, well, you're piling up all your old grass clippings and leaves and stuff. I don't know. But I guess it's, where's the teeth if somebody's just hoarding stuff and they've got no more room in their house and it starts to lurk out under their lawns. And this isn't the first time. Like this, we've always got one or two of these lurking around, right? And this one's horrendous. So where's the teeth in this thing that's going to allow our people to go over there and get it cleaned up?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it so I would direct you more over to the nuisance of as far as a definition. We spend quite a bit of time on this to identify all of those elements that you've highlighted. And so under nuisance in the definitions under subsection 4, and we've numbered them out. So there's number 1, 2, and 3, and number 1 being any accumulation of a garbage or yard waste, broken household items, or any goods, untidy work or storage, construction material, any stagnant water, or any scrap or litter. And then it gets into the overgrowth of weeds and unkept yards. And then finally, any pests or hazardous materials. So we cover it in the definition of nuisance, and nuisance will get applied to the unsightly property.
Okay, so and that makes good sense that it's clear there. Thank you for showing that. I guess it's whenever we get complaints about this stuff, it's always referred to as unsightly properties, right? That's kind of how the community. But again,
right,
we're going back to the education of the new bylaw and where this would fit into. So, yeah.
Okay.
5th Avenue and 2nd Street. No further questions. So, and I don't think, Kara, is there any, we had one submission.
Yes, that's correct. And so there was one email in support of developing a good neighbor bylaw. There was some feedback in that email regarding the purpose statement being a bit too broad, and some suggestions in regards to adding more value statements that align with the community's values, such as quiet and safety for our children. The full email will form part of the official public hearing record.
Okay. And that's the only one. So that one was supporting the bylaw. A couple of suggestions. Anything opposing the bylaw?
No, there's nothing. That's the only submission that's been received.
Okay. Further questions from council? I have no hands up. I hereby declare this public hearing relating to bylaw 4579/2020 closed at 3:29 p.m. Item number 6, strategic priorities. Chris, anything on that or for information?
Mayor Snodgrass, it is a change to the strategic priorities. After our quarterly strategic update on September 28th, I believe it was, one priority was removed, the southwest berm, which is now substantially complete, and replaced within this report recommended by those participating to move events up there, role clarity, and updating the policy. So that's the rationale for the recommendation, and there's also other minor changes on dates and different stages of different priorities and different actions taking place as well. But for the most part, the largest move has been the change of the southwest berm being removed from the list and being deemed complete, and moving up events, role clarity, and update of the policy into the top 5. That's the rationale for the recommendation, your Mayor Snodgrass.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Councillor Masterman?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Yeah, so I think I like the priority that's been added to the list, even though it wasn't one of our major ones initially. But I think one thing I really like about this is it's a short-term project. This isn't something that needs to take months and months to do. But more importantly, I think it's really gives us a great opportunity to talk about and seek public input into things like, well, the use of public realm, including things like productions, film productions. And, you know, certainly we went through you know, pretty intense period with zombies and happening, and it was you know, very to me a very exciting time for High River when Netflix was filming season 2 of Black Summer. But you know, it also raised some concerns, and I think this is going to give us a really good opportunity to explain to residents and to try to get their feedback as well as to you know, what could we be doing differently, to explain to them things like you know, that we and as a municipality are compensated by production companies, as are individual businesses, you know, things like that. I think this is a great opportunity for us to get the word out, and but also to get feedback. We've received some really good critical feedback in the past week or two, and so I just think the more we can talk about this, the better. So I guess I don't really have a question. I very quickly wanted to point out that in this section talking about us acquiring provincial properties such as Wallaceville and Beechwood, there's a reference to Rio Alta as well, and that's on page 5 of the report, I believe. And of course, we all know it's Rio Vista, the old golf course, not Rio Alta. So if that could just be changed, just corrected in that document, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Matsman. We'll make that change. I missed it again, sorry.
One other little addition that I see on the advocacy piece too, Chris, is where we're talking about the buyout reversal. We've only got Riverside Drive in there, so just to clarify, we need to add the Highview Gate properties in there as well, just so that when people are looking at it, they don't think that we're only fighting for Riverside Drive. So
okay, we'll add that. Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. No further questions, so I'll ask Councillor McMillan for a motion to adopt the updated strategic priorities chart and work program as presented.
I will give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor, consensus? Carried. Thanks, Chris. Second and third reading on the laneway closure. Sarah?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. The purpose of bylaw 4573/2020 is to close the laneway that is adjacent to the fire hall property, which is at 1010 5th Street Southeast. A portion of the current fire hall building encroaches onto the laneway, and part of the fire hall addition is being constructed on the laneway. Alberta Transportation has confirmed that they have no concerns with the construction moving forward, as there were no concerns raised at the public hearing from any members of the public or utility companies. The closing of the laneway will have no effect on transportation to the public, as it has never been opened for public use as a laneway. First reading of the bylaw was given on March 9th, 2020, and the public hearing was held on July 13th, 2020. At that public hearing, no comments were received from the public. As part of the road closure process, which is set up by Alberta Transportation, all adjacent landowners and utility companies were circulated by the town of High River. No responses were received by any of the adjacent landowners. TELUS Communications Inc. and Fortis Alberta Inc. Were the only two utility companies that said that they required utility agreements with Alberta Transportation before the road laneway closure could occur. After the public hearing, administration prepared a formal submission package to Alberta Transportation. Alberta Transportation has now reviewed the entire submission package and has confirmed by signing the bylaw themselves that they have no further concerns with the laneway closure. And that we can move forward with formally closing the laneway and have the land be under the town's ownership. If the town council chooses to proceed with second and third readings of the bylaw, administration will then register the bylaw and the endorsed rights of way agreements at the land titles office. Land titles will charge the town a fee of $30 to register the bylaw. If the town would like to consolidate the fire hall property with the laneway property, then the town would need to retain the services of an Alberta land surveyor to create a descriptive plan of survey. Descriptive plans of surveys cost approximately $1,800. Administration recommends keeping these properties separate to save this cost. While it is not ideal to have the two properties separate and to have buildings straddling a property line, the town will be in a much better position than we were before when the properties were owned in separate ownerships, the town and the province. So moving forward, the town will own both properties, even though they will be separate. That concludes administration's presentation. Are there any questions or comments?
I see no questions or comments. Just finishing this thing up. So we've been through it long enough and it's a pretty simple decision. So thanks very much, Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
So I will ask Councillor Nychuk that council give, for a motion that council gives second and third reading together to bylaw 4573/2020, being the bylaw for the purpose of closing the laneway adjacent to the fire hall located at 1010 5th Street Southeast.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Consensus. Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Sarah. Into business items. Item 8.1, I don't know. The apartments dispute for water. Who's speaking to this one? Cola?
No,
Ray is.
Ray will start first.
Says right in my script. Ray.
Yes, I know you like Ray, so he will start first. Then I will add to. Oh yeah.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So you have a report in front of you, but I'll just give a 30-second update or summary of what's happened. From July, August 2017 bill up until September, October 2019, there was a decimal issue error that was happening within the Solantis utility account. Once that was discovered in early December 2019, an invoice that summarized the total then was sent to the condo board. The error that was happening was just a code issue that was within the system itself. So it was a code 02 when it should be a code 03, and that just tells the system where the decimal place should be. So Jim Walker is our main contact for the condo board. He's in dispute of the invoice and is willing to pay 50%. But from the finance point of view, we thought we can provide more time to pay for that invoice, but not a reduction of 50%. From where we're standing, it's a matter of the water was used. This is not a normal practice, but it is a practice within the utility buildings to make corrections and a catch-up bill. So that's the matter before you. Cola does have a couple of comments to add as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Just in addition to Ray's presentation, our recommendation to defeat the motion was based on the following, just to add a few points to what Ray mentioned. The recommendation was based on professional judgment from us, based on equity and fairness, as the billing actually reflects water consumed by these 20 units apartment within the period. The error was due to the meter coding error, which translated to a decimal place error. We also recognize the fact that there was a meter decimal place error during the conversion process into a billing system. Hence, there was no penalties on the account. We also offered to agree to a payment term over a period of 2 years. For this apartment, the average water consumption for the 20-unit apartment before the billing error was about 300 cubic meters, as you can see in the report, for every 2 months, billing period before the error occurred. But this was significantly reduced to average of about 10 cubic meters, from 300 to about 10. This was a significant reduction, which we expect the management to see this abnormal reduction in their billing. And based on that, we expect them to contact the town. In terms of payment, on average, they pay about $1,000 per billing period. But because of this error, the bill reduced to about $350. So that's another basis for our recommendation. And also, due to the recognition that the error was not that of the customer, like I mentioned before, we offered to phase out the payment over 24 months as against the 14 billing cycle error that we had. The cycle error was over 14 period, and we offered the management to pay over 24 months, just to minimize the impact on their finances. But however, the management of the apartment declined this option or the offer, and instead, Jim reported the issue to Alberta Utility Consumer Advocacy, UCA, for adjudication. And the commission gave ruling in favor of the town after their review, and they considered the matter closed from their end. As a matter of fact, it was asked to come back to the town to negotiate the payment time to avoid future penalties. Since there's only 1 meter serving the whole 20 units in this apartment, the management must have been billing their tenants based on flat monthly fee, not based on consumption per apartment, irrespective of the billing error, because we only have one single meter for the entire unit in that apartment. So they must have been billing on flat fee. So the billing clerk, why did we not catch this error on time? The billing clerk has over 6,000 accounts to review every billing cycle, and the process is now in place for more quality checks to pick abnormal billings. So usually during the billing cycle, there are several accounts that we need to go into. Just like Ray mentioned, the error is not a data input, it's just on conversion. For every meter that we use, the conversion is based on the meter. So on the meter code, if for instance, we key in 2 instead of meter code 3, by the time the system sees the reading, it will convert it into appropriate decimal points. So, and finally, we have also had instances in the past from other customers with similar issue on this same meter reading who have agreed to repay their underbilling over a 2-year period. And also the town, we have also refunded some customers who have been wrongly billed in recent past to ensure equity and fairness. So these are the reasons we base our recommendation on for council consideration. So this is the end of our presentation. Myself and Ray, we are ready to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Paula.
Thank you.
Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. So I don't know that I really have a question, but I do have a concern about this one, and I certainly won't be voting to reduce this at all. You know, a couple of things have been pointed out to us. I mean, but to start with, you know, the overriding principle of water. We all know what a precious commodity it is. It's valuable to us. It's valuable to the town of High River. It's critical for us to live, and it's not an unlimited supply. What Stellantis was charged. It's not like they were charged for or what we're you know the total amount. It's not like they didn't use this water and they're being charged for it. They did use it, and I don't think that the town of High River residents as a whole should be paying for that.
Is he froze for everybody or just me?
Everybody.
If they're, you know, monthly billing, this was noticed, but they just thought, or this is how it's looking. I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but this is definitely what the optics are. That because how do you not notice on your billing? I think they knew, and I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind, which Cola talked about as well, is there was somebody else in a similar situation, and they've agreed to pay the whole amount over 2 years, and or an extended time. I believe Cola said 2 years.
Yes, 2 years.
You know, I'm not sure how we forgive half of it in this case when the other people are paying the whole shot over 2 years. So I don't know. I just have a bad feeling about this and a bad taste on this one, and I can't support any kind of reduction on this.
So, Councillor Masterman, just on the comment of not noticing, I have talked to Jim over the last number of months, a couple of times on this to try to figure out what happened, what went on when it first got when it first got noticed. So Jim has a bookkeeper that pays these bills, and you know, me running my own business, my own home, yeah, I'd have caught it, because I'm running things, right? So that's why it didn't get paid. The bill was just being paid with what it was, and I was like, same way that we didn't catch it on the town end, right? It took us 2 years for us to find it as well. So I'm not going to put fault on that. What I am learning, and what I kind of wasn't clear on through this whole thing is, you know, the water, the $5,100 worth of water, is that the right number? And was it used? Sounds like it absolutely was used. And
yes.
So there's a new little piece there for me. So I'll continue with other councillors' questions, but I just wanted to clear that up on getting it paid, right? Because can't fault on that end, because we did the same thing, in my opinion. We missed it, and you know, yeah, mistakes are made on our end sometimes. But Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you very much, Ray and Cola, for your presentation.
Thank you.
And your diligence. I most definitely will not be voting for the reduction. In addition to Councillor Masterman's comments, I think it's just it's our individual, what am I trying to say? I think it's an expectation that we review our bills and accordingly, and especially with it's a business. This was a 20-unit apartment, not just a small home. And the other thing, I think the town has been more than fair offering a payment plan without penalty, correct?
Yes.
And for equity's sake as well, as mentioned that this has happened. I also know that this makes us review our policies as well to make sure that we're looking at our processes. But I guess a question I have is actually, I guess, directed towards Chris, because it says Chris as a CAO is actually recommending that this motion is accepted. I guess I would like to know the rationale why you are requesting that it would be a recommended motion.
Certainly, I think there's some due diligence on our behalf to regularly check our billing processes and making sure that our decimal places are in the right spot. The fact that it took kind of 2 years for that, I think, is kind of is something that we need to correct and figure that out. And I think when we're dealing with homeowners, it's easier to pick up a billing error because they're checking their bill on a regular basis. When you're dealing with a strata or a commercial building per se, it's not as easy as the homeowner or the property owner to pick up on that billing discrepancy. And I've seen this happen a lot of times in the past where it has come before council and dealt with in different ways, precedent or not, no precedent from that perspective. Each circumstance is different based upon the conditions that brought forward. And in my conversations with Jim, he's more than happy, the whole strata is more than happy to share 50% of the responsibility of not picking this up in time, provided we kind of also recognize the fact that we did not pick this up in a reasonable amount of time. And I think 2 years is where I have a problem with, from an administration side of things, is 2 years is a little bit too long for such a large user to miss on that amount of water. So that's the rationale for my recommendation.
Thanks, Chris. And I guess from my rationale, though, just if I had a commercial building, I'm hoping that Mr. Walker will then think that, yes, we do need to observe our bookkeepers and not just take it for granted that, oh, whatever. Like, I think it's due diligence. And that's why I'm totally against voting for the reduction. I think, yes, as the town, we can learn to improve our policies. But I think if you own a 20-unit condo, it can't just be a blatant, oh, I'll just leave it up to the bookkeeper. And then, because when I was looking at those, the average numbers, it's like, as a personal homeowner, I'd be shaking my head. I wouldn't be thinking, woohoo, I hit the jackpot. Like, my numbers are so reduced. So I think it's a good learning lesson for both parties. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. My question is from the inside end of the whole thing, and is we have a bookkeeper that's paying the bills and collecting the money from the tenants. What's the amount collected? We learned that there was a flat fee designated for the water billing. Was it the same before the amount went down as it was after the amount went down? So did they collect only on the billing amount or on a regular amount that the tenants paid every month? Do we know that?
I can answer that. Because there's no separate meters for each of the apartments.
Yes.
We have only one meter, only one reading. They have 20 units. So in that case, I would have expected them to be collecting same flat fee, which they've been paying every month, irrespective of the reading, because the reading that we are giving them is just, you've consumed 300 this month. We are not telling them unit A consume this, unit B. So there's no way for them to split into the units. So they must have been collecting flat fees.
So then they collected the amount for water every month based on a normal water usage billing.
Yes.
So they collected more than they actually paid out.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That firms up my opinion and decision on this topic.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Cola, first of all, going back to Councillor Moore's question, do you know that for a fact? It's been 2 years now. Were they charged based on the rate over 2 years ago or on current rates? I don't think we know that for sure. Can you confirm?
Yeah, let me reconfirm that.
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of
sorry. Let me respond. I have the answer. My response was based on the fact that the problem started July, August 2017. The billing before that time was accurate. And just like I said earlier, we don't have separate meter reading for each of the units. So they must have been collecting flat fee. I assume they will have been collecting flat fees every month, irrespective of the reading. So that is just my assumption, unless they come and tell us they split every month based on whatever basis they use.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes.
So I kind of look at this, I tried to visualize this whole thing and I thought, if I went to co-op and been buying gas at co-op for 2 years, something was wrong with their pump and I was paying less for 2 years every time I filled up. I go back today to fill up and they say, oh, you owe us from 2 years ago because our pump was wrong. I wouldn't pay it. I mean, it's up to us as a company, really a business, to make sure that the bills we're sending out are accurate and that they're on time, they're paid for, all the rest of it, and everything's in good standing. And for me, I look at this and say 50% is a generous offer. He's been paying his bills on time. He's been getting them, assuming they're correct, which he should. It's up to us to make sure our billing goes out correctly, not up to the end user or customer. Thank you.
See, and that's where I've been struggling with this thing on exactly as us as a business selling a product. I'm struggling that this is all on Solantis. Cole, I've got a few other questions that are going, but before it slips me, so July, August 2017, before that, their average use was 1,000 cubes, is that right? Ray?
I don't think it was as high as 1,000 cubes.
Not 1,000, 300 cubes.
300 cubes.
Yes,
and then
average.
300 cubes average.
Yes.
And then, so from July, August, for the next 2 years, what was the average there?
13.
1.3. That's not making sense to me on the decimal point moving. I would think that it would be like 30, not all the way down to 13.
If you look at the attachment we give to you, attached to that report, page 60, 60, the portion shaded in yellow.
Yep.
The M3 consumption recorded, you will see 9, 11, 10, 11. Those are the actual consumption recorded in narrow. And if you look towards your right, instead of 90, we recorded it as 9. They consumed 90, but it was reported as 9. In 2019, they consumed 110, but it was recorded as 11. 100 recorded as 10. Yeah, on and on like that.
Okay, I see.
Simply because of the meter coding we indicated. And just like I said, there are other customers too that it favors them. We send them excessive bill. And when they complained, just the other way around of this, we looked at it, oh, this is a meter error. It's not the fault of the customer. They did not consume this water, and we gave them the refund. Even though it was, some of them are over 2 years as well. We did not tell them, oh, sorry, yeah, forget it. We have billed you excessively in the last 2 years. We felt that would be very unfair because they did not use that amount of water. So we gave them refund straight away.
Yeah. I don't know. There's just a 50-50 responsibility on here, and the 50-50 negotiation is kind of looking fair to me right now, but we'll continue on. Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Smiers, and thanks, Colin, Ray. I'm really struggling with this one because you're right. I think as a business for that long a period, we should take some ownership of it. But on the other hand, as much as, you know, these cases could be looked at individually, we've set a precedent in having someone already paying this bill in full. So I'm struggling with that going forward. I just, though, really want to clarify Councillor Moore's point, and to make sure we're all on the same page. I don't think we know the answer to what was billed to those residents, whether it was based on the $1,000 a month versus the $300 a month. I don't think we have the answer to what that 2-year billing period was to those residents.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So we don't know that answer.
It's an assumption, right?
It's an assumption, yes.
Okay. Councillor Nychuk.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. To carry on from where Councillor Cooey was, that gets to be the sticking point in this for me. Clearly the water was consumed. We had an error in not billing it appropriately. I won't say it's an error from the owner's side of not recognizing it, but I would think if they had an accountant or a bookkeeper that was diligent in the process, this would have been recognized, because it's an extremely different number than what their average is. It's an anomaly. In the business that I operate, that would have come out to me pretty clearly. That's just me. People make mistakes, I understand that. But in this case, we've consumed water. It's been used. The Alberta government has deemed that this is inappropriate billing, correct, Cola?
Yes, correct.
They've sided with us, correct?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
I can appreciate the mistake. Going under the premise that these residents were probably billed under a monthly average. Can we assume that the actual funds were collected for the average amount of water used? Probably. If that's the case, there's only one way I would vote. And that's in favor of collecting what's outstanding. I don't know if we can ask the owner what he billed the residents at that time. If they billed to the decreased average, then I can see sharing. If they were continuing to collect the average that was there prior to the discrepancy happening, then I think the funds were there and collected by the owner and that they should be paid for the water that was consumed. So I don't know if that's a piece of information we can have, but that would sure make this decision a little bit easier for me to make.
I don't know if that information is any of our business though, Mike. You know, it's like,
Yeah, I can appreciate that. That's why
You know what I
that's why
mean?
I'm saying that. Yeah, that's his business, and it's none of my business to know how he operates his business.
Absolutely.
we got what we have in front of us and our responsibility, our portion of this thing where we didn't catch it, he didn't catch it, they didn't catch it. It's a little sticky.
Yeah.
I'm kind of going back, the way, I have been thinking about this is along the lines of what Councillor Kinghorn was saying, that if my business fails to invoice somebody incorrectly, it's tough for me to go back to them 2 years later and say, hey, that earn was actually $1,000, not 10, right? So I'm kind of like, well, people always ask us, we need to operate government more like a business. I don't know, it'd be pretty tough, but that's the advantage that you have in a municipality, in a government thing that we have to be cognizant of and careful of, is that, there's no threat of losing this customer because we do this, right? It's different than operating your own business where you miss invoice and then try to go back a year or two later and get that. It's going to stink, right? It's not going to reflect on the way you're running your business very well. But in a municipality, well, you got the advantage because you're not going to lose that person because the building and the structure is here and they need water. So I'm making my decision based on integrity and what I feel is right. And I'm not quite there as to what that exactly is yet. So I'll go to Councillor Moore.
Sorry, but thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I know all of the things that are involved here, but my decision is pivotal on whether they collected the money for it and didn't pay the appropriate supplier. So if they did, then they've already collected the money that we're asking them to pay. So it's it kind of is our business about whether they collected that money based on that. And that would be the basis of my decision, because somebody's already got the money for that. And if they collected it and added it to their profit, and It basically should be paid because it's a difficult thing about errors and omissions, but when somebody knows that that is not right and doesn't raise a point on it, I can assure you that if it was reversed the other direction and that we were charging too much, that they would have brought that up immediately.
Immediately.
Yeah, valid points, Councillor Moore. I'm going to go back and touch on this residence thing again. I think it's a dangerous line that you can use it for what you want, of course, but to me, that's the responsibility of the residents. Now that this is out there in the public and they know what's going on, if they're watching this, that's their responsibility to go back and to get it back or whatever, however this decision goes. But I don't know, this is Councillor Masterman.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So like you, Mayor Snodgrass, I'm also making my decision based on integrity and what I think is right. We just happen to think differently about this, that's all. I think it's important that we make the decision based on the information we have, not on the information we don't have. And I don't really, I suspect that if this savings had been passed on to residents, I suspect we would have been told, but we weren't told that. So I'm not guessing either way, and I don't really care. To me, it still comes down to the fact that this happened. They used the water. I don't know why we would give them, and yes, it was a billing error on our part. There is a difference to me between a funeral home and co-op in that we're talking about a public resource here. We're talking about a municipality, not a private business. We're talking about the rest of town residents basically picking up the cost of if we do this, basically picking up the cost of half the water that was actually used. And I'm not prepared to do that, and so I'm still going to be voting against it. So thanks.
Excellent comments. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you very much, Councillor Masterman, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Although I can understand Councillor Kinghorn and Mayor Snodgrass with the lens of a personal private business, but we represent the public. We've got 14,000 population, and we have to think about who we truly serve. And so I most definitely will not be voting in favor.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Okay, a couple of final comments here. One, I do rent out property in town. My rent is based on the overall cost of that home. Whether the water use goes up or goes down, it doesn't affect what I charge for rent. It's just, the rent is a flat fee. Secondly, the town residents have been paying for this for 2 years now. For 2 years, we've been doing this incorrectly. Are we going to reduce the prices back to the town residents over the last 2 years? I mean, it's already been done. It's included in our annual taxes and our annual water fees and our annual bills that we pay. I just don't see going backwards. I'm really frustrated with it, as you can tell. I just don't see going backwards when a person's been paying their bill, paying it monthly, a good customer, a good client, and we go back and say, oh, you didn't pay us enough. I just can't bite that at all. Sorry, I'm just not making sense right now. Thanks.
Oh, you're making sense. Okay. No further hands are up. So we will go to, I am going to ask go back to Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, the council authorizes administration a 50% reduction on utility account 3930.01 by $2,546.30 in respect of invoice number 965278.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I will put that motion on the table.
Thank you very much. And I will start with Councillor Moore. I'm going to take, this will not be a consensus vote, of course, so Councillor Moore, your vote.
Not opposed.
Councillor Masterman, your vote.
Opposed, Mayor Snodgrass.
Councillor McMillan.
Opposed, Mayor Snodgrass.
Councillor Cooley.
In favor.
Councillor Kinghorn.
In favor.
Councillor Nychuk.
In favor.
Fifty-fifty fault, 50-50 pay. I vote in favor. Motion is carried. On to the next item. Thank you very much. Long discussion.
Thank you.
Cody, on to 8.2.
Absolutely. Good morning, or I guess afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here bringing forward a revised level of service to the fire department. So back in 2010, a level of service was created for the fire department. Since then, obviously, our service has changed significantly. And so what we've done is we revised the level of service policy to reflect our current services that we provide to the community, and also to help, I guess, council and our ratepayers understand to what level we'll provide those services to them. So this is bringing it forward for council's support in approving the level of service policy. Financial implications surrounding level of service. Obviously, like anything, as we increase service to our residents, it may be training, it may be equipment, etc. that may be implicated. So the plan for the level of services, should we want to increase the level of service in any of these that we currently have listed in this policy going forward, it will be something that we'll bring to council to make sure that everybody's on board with that level of service increase. As it stands right now, with the current services laid out in the level of service, there is no change to fees, I suppose, or training levels, as we're currently doing those services that are listed there and providing those services to the ratepayers. And the level of service policy kind of stems back from the OH&S Code of Practice. In 2007, they created a Code of Practice for firefighters through OH&S, and it was basically put forward that we needed to have a level of service to dictate what services we as a community will provide and to what level. So that's kind of where the level of service stems from. So is there any questions?
Thanks, Cody. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Cody, for your presentation. I just have a question because I'm not into the lingo. I just wanted to know, what is Delta and Echo level response determinants?
Certainly. So basically, every call is given a determinant level. So starting at A all the way to E. So an alpha, I guess to put it really simple, is an alpha would be somebody stubbed a toe and they have a sore toe. And then when you get into an echo, it's somebody who's not conscious, not breathing, doesn't have a pulse. So that's kind of the severity of it. So when you look in building fire, for example, would be a building fire that's threatening other structures, maybe a delta. A building fire with somebody trapped inside would then come in as an echo response.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much.
You betcha.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Hi, Cody, maybe not directly to your report, but what happens, like I noticed on the weekend, you folks helped out our friends in Okotoks on a house fire.
Yes.
How do we charge for that? How does that all work? Can you, not in great detail, but can you give me a rough outline?
Yeah, certainly. So we have mutual aid agreements with the surrounding communities. So be it Foothills, Nanton, and Okotoks being one of them. And so we kind of have set fees that we charge for apparatus and overages and stuff like that. So there is some cost recoupment of those fees for trucks and manpower and such. Absolutely.
Thanks, Cody. Pretty simple the way it's outlined, so no further questions. I will ask Councillor McMillan for a motion that council adopt the fire department level of service policy, fire POL 100-00, and that council rescind the fire department level of service policy POL 10-100-00.
I'll give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. This one I will do consensus. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks very much, Cody.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Rescindment of notice of meetings policy. Quickly, Kara.
Absolutely. So good afternoon. Administration is recommending that council rescind the notice of meetings policy. As council will remember, you have now adopted the public notification policy, which speaks to advertising meetings, rendering this policy no longer required. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Pretty simple housekeeping. No questions. So ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that council rescind the notice of meetings policy POL 04-10101.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion for you.
Thank you very much. All in favor, consensus? Motion is carried. Okay, so now we will move into the added item number 8.4, the Hospital Foundation. And who wants to start this? Let me just put this to Councillor Masterman because he's the one that brought it forward anyways.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. So yeah, this kind of came up last week. I was at the, Karen and I were at the Hospital Foundation fundraiser last Friday night at the Sunset Drive-In, like hundreds of other people. Wonderful event. And at one point, the MC was announcing the sponsors for the event, the major sponsors, including the municipalities who had provided sponsorship. And I was both surprised and disappointed that High River was not mentioned. And I understand it was an oversight on our part, but because it had been put on an agenda, and I believe it was an agenda of a very long meeting towards the end, and I think anyway, it just wasn't dealt with. And so, but it also kind of raised a bigger issue that I think we need a policy so that things like this don't fall through the cracks, and especially the Hospital Foundation. Every person in High River and surrounding communities is impacted by the foundation and the work that it does, and the fundraising, and I think it's just a shame that we didn't get in on this prior to the event, and so I really think that the council could make things right and approve an amount, and I'm just you know, the amount that's sort of rattling around in my brain is $1,000, but I also think that we need to make sure that the foundation, because the foundation does annual events and like one major annual event and then many other smaller events and initiatives through the year. But I really think that we need to ensure that that High River is stepping up every single year, and I don't know how that would look. You know, I'm certainly open to suggestions and discussion on this. You know, whether it goes to the community groups grant, which you know is an annual process that council goes through, that we approve a certain amount for different community groups and organizations such as STARS, which also does great things for us and other communities. So so I just kind of want to maybe throw that out there and would welcome any comments that anybody has any suggestions or comments, or am I just kind of blowing in the wind here? Thanks.
I'll answer that. You're definitely not blowing in the wind, and I'll be honest, I'm kind of embarrassed as to what's happened over the last number of years now that I kind of know what's going on. Because one thing with you know, every year we're asked, you know, purchase a table and who wants tickets for this thing, right? And that's low hanging fruit and a weak donation and involvement in these things, because an $85 ticket, when you buy an $85 ticket to these kinds of events, out of that $85, they got to pay for the rental of the facility as well as your meal. So out of that $85, the foundation might put 30 in their pocket, might, right? So it's a weak donation, and then we put just a silent auction item on that might bring $200 or $300. So I know for myself, and I know for a number of other counselors, that, you know, every year at this, it's like, oh, you know, I always go sit at a friend's table. They buy a whole table, and there's a group of us that we go every year, and it's not a town ticket that's purchased. I go sit with Muth, and then blow money on a bag of potatoes. So it's kind of embarrassing to me to know now how kind of weak our donation to this foundation has been, and how important this foundation is. It's the High River District Health Foundation. It's got our name on it, and we're at the bottom end of municipalities' donations. So that's where I'm at. And as far as putting these over to a CBAC or something, absolutely not. There's about 3 of them that I can think of that should be treated, that are kind of our things, that should be treated separately. That are extremely important to this community. So I don't think they need to be going through the CBAC process for this. I'm glad I'm very, very happy you brought this forward, Councillor Masterman, because this has been a miss for a lot of years. Next on the questions and comments is Councillor Cooley.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks, Councillor Masterman, for bringing this forward and for your conversations. I think, just in full transparency, I think the majority of people recognize that I'm employed by that foundation, and I just want to be clear that I've not stepped out of this conversation because I have no pecuniary interest in this conversation. Sponsorships of this kind have no direct benefit to me, but to the foundation as a whole. And I think this is, to put that hat on for a minute, I'm glad to see this conversation happening, not only for the foundation, but as Mayor Snodgrass mentioned, some other local charities that are key in our community that I think I think we need some sort of guidelines or policies how we move forward, because I think that's how these things have fallen through the cracks. So I appreciate you bringing it to the table, and I'm happy to bring any questions, answer any questions from the other side of the table, but I do appreciate it coming forward. So thank you.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Question for Kara. I don't know if you'll have this handy, but my understanding is the STARS is a per capita requisition. Is that the case? And if so, how much is it?
I'm going to have to actually defer that to Cola. Cola, are you there?
We can give him a moment to come online, but I guess from my perspective is we pick these sort of numbers, $1,000. I would rather that we do it based on a per capita basis, and that way it's an ongoing thing. It happens every year. It's based on our population who are likely to use the service. So that would be my recommendation if I could put one forward.
Sorry, I'm back with you. Sorry for that.
The question, Cola, is with the STARS donation, it's a per capita donation, right?
No, for STAR, it's not per capita.
STARS isn't?
No, it isn't.
How does STARS work? I thought it was.
I can just double check. Just give me, a few seconds. I will double check.
Councillor Moore.
It's STARS is per capita. I think it's $1 per capita, and it might be lower than that, but it's in that vicinity. I know that they're trying to have some municipalities do $2 per capita. And I know that we were lower.
And this donation, Chris, where would this come from in our budget? Is this out of the mayor's slush fund?
You could term it that way, Mayor Snodgrass. We'd find someplace where there's surplus, but more than likely there's a large surplus within council training or council communications that we can take advantage of near this last end of the year that we could fund from.
Okay.
Mayor Snodgrass?
Yeah, go ahead, Cola.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back with you. Yes, my error. Star Foundation was based on per capita. For 2020, it was $1.05. And that's what we are proposing for 2021. We give them $14,800 based on $1.05 per capita.
Okay, continue on. Kathy, your hand is still up. Are we? Is that okay? Okay, back to Councillor Cooey. Go down the list.
Thank you again. Just a suggestion. Well, I appreciate Councillor Kinghorn's thought about a per capita. I wonder if that's maybe too large of a conversation for today, because I think we need to consider as a whole some of these other organizations. And again, this is an awkward conversation for me. But to consider one-time donation for this year's event to support this year's event, and to maybe look further into that. I think that's a bigger conversation, and we have to consider some other groups as well.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. And to reflect upon what Councillor Cooey just said, that's what my suggestion was going to be, is that perhaps today's discussion is a finite amount, so that we rectify our forgetfulness about this very important foundation, but also that we do need to have some serious conversations about other charitable organizations that we might be backing, whether it's on a per capita basis or not.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I was just kind of wondering whether we still have in the council budget the PR fund. It's kind of like a slush fund. And that's where we actually took the donations out of in past years for the hospital foundation and a couple of others. So I wonder, I didn't look at our council budget, but I wonder if that got cut out or is it still there?
Councillor Moore, through Mayor Snodgrass, it's still there from my understanding. So council, with COVID, we have quite a bit of activities that council did not participate in that will be able to find whatever donation council deems warranted for this foundation.
Yeah, so I would suggest or be willing to make a motion if that's what you would want, that we take the sum of whatever amount that is decided from that sum of money in our budget at this point to make a retroactive, in this case, donation to the hospital foundation. Should I give a sum?
Retroactive, how far?
Oh, it's just retroactive because the event has gone beyond.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Moore, some may be prudent just to start the debate on what will be the appropriate sum.
Okay. Should I?
Well, just before, I just went back through my business emails to bring up the sponsorship stuff, just so that everybody's clear where the sponsorship opportunities were for this year. And champion sponsor was $1,000, lead sponsor $2,500, and the premier sponsors were $5,000. So those were kind of the numbers, just to bring that forward. What's going on? Councillor Masterman, and then we'll come back to Don.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks, Don. I appreciate your willingness to do that motion. I guess I'm kind of taking the chicken's way out here, rather than throwing a figure into a motion. I just threw out the figure of $1,000, but I'm now thinking $1,500. We own this thing. I mean, we don't own it, Kathy. Don't get me wrong, Councillor Cooey. Our name is on this foundation. It's not any other town or municipality hospital foundation, and I think we should show some pride in that, and I think I'd be disappointed if we entertain any less than 15, and certainly so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Moore.
Okay, so what's the sponsorship levels?
5,000 was the top. That's the premier big guys. The lead was 2,500 and the champion was 1,000.
Okay, I would put in my motion then that we become a lead sponsor for the foundation on an ongoing basis, with funds to come from the council PR fund.
Motion is on the floor at $2,500.
I have a question.
Okay, hang on. I'm trying to go through. Don's got his hand up. Bruce has his hand up there. You guys still on the docket or you're good? Okay. Councillor McMillan. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you. So just for clarification, are we saying $2,500 for 2020 and then reviewing or are we now making the foundation a completely separate recipient every year of what's it called, lead, whatever level? Is that what we're doing? Just for clarification.
Yeah, so the way the motion is stated right now, Don has added the words ongoing.
Ongoing, correct.
Basis in there. That's the way the motion is. I'd like to amend that, ask for a friendly amendment to remove that ongoing while we kind of look at these other three. I agree with the amount. I agree with being the lead sponsor. I think we need to own this thing rather than our $400 maybe every year, right? It's, like I said, it's embarrassing. I agree 100% with Councillor Moore's motion, but I think we need to just get a few of these organizations tightened up as to what we're doing, and especially the ones where we're asked to buy seats at. I've also got a big issue with that because it's difficult, and it has been since I've been here. It's a nightmare for our staff to, keep going to back to council. Who's going? Who isn't going? Who needs a ticket? Do you need a ticket? Don't need a ticket? Well, I don't know if my spouse is going. I got to buy her a ticket. Blah blah blah. Him a ticket. And so I'd like to remove that completely out of the play. You want a ticket? Go buy your ticket, councillor.
Well,
right?
That's what I like. I think that's the beauty of this Mayor Snodgrass is it eliminates all that extra stuff. If we want to get a ticket, then just like you said, we sit at our friends' tables anyway. So we go, we pay our own way. I just think administratively, this makes it more proficient and efficient and professional. And so that's where I just wanted the clarification that if it's ongoing, then we're not doing per capita, or is it just this one time? Because that's where I'm just trying to struggle with. It's just this one time and then we analyze it thinking about per capita? Or is it going to be every year we commit to that lead amount?
And I think we can decide that later on if Councillor Moore accepts my friendly amendment of removing the ongoing thing. Can I get a nod out of you?
Yes, could I just explain the sponsorship levels do change over periods of time, the amounts go up. But the other thing included with each sponsorship level is the number of tickets to the dinner as well. So am I correct? Yeah. So if you're on the bottom, the champion sponsorship, it comes with 2 tickets to the event, so that the champion sponsor can attend the event as well as making the donation. So that way, the logic behind that is so that you get people there in attendance, and hopefully they're going to buy something or donate further at that time. So,
right, that's good.
I'd be I would accept that motion, and that we could look at that whole PR type account and decide what items are going to come out of that, and not go to any other committee. That's just counts donation.
Okay.
Mayor Snodgrass, may I
Go.
just?
Yep.
May I? Thanks. I think, speaking to Mayor Snodgrass's point before, that with the tickets, it's almost like the actual donation is kind of washed out by the time, like, it's too bad there wasn't just an option where there are no tickets, but yet I get it because you go to the event. But I guess I'm just struggling as a council member to think about, I totally get it as a citizen who buys the lead, that they should get a ticket to the event. But I'm just wondering if maybe just how I'm kind of viewing this is that we're donating not because of the event, but we're donating on an annual basis to this organization. Is that how we're thinking of it?
And you don't have to be the lead sponsor. You can just do the $2,500 cash donations. Done. And it's clean.
See, I like that kind of concept.
I think we can negotiate that as to how that would look, because with the lead sponsorship, you know, you get logo recognition, you know, people know that you're part of it, right? And I would like that people know the town of High River is behind this foundation, right? I'm sure I got a good connection over at the foundation, so I'm sure we can talk to her and get something figured out that we do a cash donation, but kind of like the ticket thing out of play. I don't know, we can do that.
Mayor Snodgrass, if I could just suggest, let's just focus on 2020, rectifying the wrong that occurred, and then let staff work on a sponsorship policy to come forward that kind of addresses the other groups that may be out there, and then looks at it holistically as well with our grants and aid and our to the other groups as well, and see if there's a formula that we can work out that's fair and represents some of the other groups as well. So let's just rectify the 2020 issue, and then we can have a lot more discussion. We're trying to formulate policy right now, and it's getting long in the evening.
Yep. Kara, do you have something? Thanks, Chris. Kara, do you have something written down right now as far as this Dawn's motion?
So originally, it was about becoming the lead sponsor for 2,500 on an ongoing basis. But if you'd like to go in the way that Chris is proposing, which I agree with, because there's something like, be it resolved that council donated $2,500 donation for 2020, and to direct administration to return to a future meeting with a draft sponsorship policy or something to that effect. Are you happy with that, Chris?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. And I think time is of the essence because we're going into budget conversations, and we'll start getting requests as well. And for some of these groups, we may not know that there may be other groups that come out and ask for a letter until the spring of 2021 or the summer of 2021. So we might have to have a little bit of reserve left aside for some of those other groups that may have an important initiative that needs to be moved forward.
Okay, Dawn, Kara's motion, the whole rewording there, are you okay with that? As
I would add, I would add where the money comes from.
Okay. Got that, Kara?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. So everybody knows it's a $2,500 cash donation to the hospital foundation. Motions on the floor from Councillor Moore. Consensus, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you all from our local healthcare team.
We will get this squared away properly. Thanks, Kara. Thanks, Chris. Number 9, council correspondence requiring action from the Crazel Corp tax relief request. Who wants to speak? Chris?
Certainly, Mayor Snodgrass. This was a follow-up to an email correspondence that Councillor McMillan was going through with the property owner. And I followed that up with a phone call with the individual. Now, the conversation was very short on the tax aspect of things. He understood that there was deadlines in place. And we talked about, for another hour afterwards, talked about a whole bunch of other issues not related to taxes. So I was surprised to see this letter come in, but it is a request to council. And it's his right to have that deliberated by council to have the $130 reduced. However, he did miss the date. We are not the city of Calgary. It is September the 8th, and we communicated quite clearly from the very start that our date would be August 31st. That was well aware, even was sent out with the tax notices as well. So that's kind of the background on this issue. He had been communicated that we would not be kind of changing it, but it's his opportunity to be heard by council.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. So when I saw this correspondence, I was a little bit surprised because with your email, Chris, of September 24th, it sounded like Mr. Kreisel was understanding. But I do have a couple of questions. And a little bit influenced about our previous conversation is, in light of COVID, and I know you're saying that, you know, we're not the city of Calgary, but I guess one of my questions is, how many other, just off, if you know, how many other High River businesses are owned by people who are residents of the city of Calgary? And did they get the tax times mixed up? Because I will say one thing, when I was talking to him as well as reading this, in light of COVID, and the fact that late by, when was our deadline? August 31st?
Yes.
So late by 9 days. And we've just now had a previous debate about 2 years with water. And I guess what I'm just saying is I was trying to I'm putting myself in his shoes, that if I was a resident of Calgary, and I know I should know what's going on with High River, but I could see during these challenging times that I'd have, September 30th in my head for all across. And he's even made assumed that it was across the province. So I don't know. I'm not actually too against this. Originally I was thinking about it because of because of equitable treatment, but I'm just wondering, you know, in light of it, we're not dealing with a great big span of time here, and I'm open to hearing about other council, but I'm just kind of curious about if there are other businesses in town with residents who live in Calgary, as well as overall, even thinking about all of our businesses. Has everyone been on time with their payments this year?
Well, I can't answer that question, but I can defer to Cole to see if he knows if everybody has paid or what's still left delinquent.
Yes, thank you, Chris. I can confirm that not everybody has paid, but the council policy is in place. Once you fail to pay, then the penalty kicks in. And the penalty comes in every month until you pay off. And we have not had any issue on those who have not paid. So we have few accounts that have not paid. We are charging interest and penalty on whatever is outstanding, which they have to pay. And there has not been any request apart from this one.
Thanks, Cole. That's just what I wanted to know, because, and thank you for reminding me that this is about the penalty, not the amount. So,
yes, it's about the penalty. Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Masterman.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So I guess I'm just going to be a hard case today. You know, this is a resource and business development consulting company. Making an assumption that we have the same dates as Calgary because they're based in Calgary. I mean, to me, there's some things you can safely make assumptions about, and tax is not one of them, and nor should you. You got a letter. The letter said when it was due, so yeah, I can't do this one either. Sorry.
Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. I think my decision is based on a conversation I had with a resident who, from what I understand, paid it on the last day, but because they paid it through their bank, which tells you you could be the payment would arrive 24 to 48 hours late, and it was, so they were charged. And so my response to them was, number one, they'd already been given 2 months grace with the COVID, and that it needs to be consistent across the board. There's other people that have paid the penalty and other residents that have paid the penalty, or commercial or residential and commercial taxes have paid that penalty. And I think, you open up a can of worms if you start doing it for one. I think in fairness to the people that have paid tips, they've all paid on time, and everyone else that either paid by our original deadline or this deadline, I think it's overall fairness.
Mayor Snodgrass?
Go ahead, Cola.
Yeah, I just want to add a comment to Councillor Qui's comment. For the penalty, we always ignore those people who paid at the bank, but the bank did not give us the credit until a later date. So we ignore them from the penalty because effectively they've paid on so date before the deadline. So they are not charged penalties. The same thing.
Thanks, that was just my assumption. That may have gone wrong.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Moore.
Just wanted to say that if a person wants to pay by Calgary's date of penalty date that may be paid, we should convert it to Calgary's business tax rate. They would pay a lot more taxes.
Councillor Cooey? No? Councillor McMillan?
And I just want to thank you, and thank you, Councillor Cooey, because you've made me reframe, because I think it's important about equitable treatment. And so thank you also to Councillor Masterman. Councillor Moore, that was a very cheeky remark, though.
So when I look at this and knowing what happened in the previous decision, they're two separate, drastically two different things in my mind. There's mistakes from both sides that were made on the first one. This is just, I'm telling you, nothing of this I can even begin. They knew about the grace period of the town of High River. They knew when that started and when it was all about. So how didn't you know when it ended? I don't know. That one just doesn't fly with me. Anyone in that property, going back to kind of what Councillor Masterman was saying, you're in the property business. I don't care. You know damn well that rules are different between every municipality. This guy knows that. Saying I thought it was the same everywhere. No, I'm not even flying that. That's even, I'm not buying that one as an excuse. So I want nothing to do with giving any tax relief. You missed paying, you owe the money. Thanks very much. Continue on. And we can deal with your other things, and we'll have some money to maybe deal with your other things that you needed on the list you gave Chris. So that's kind of where I'm at. So there's no motion on this one. It's only if a councillor wants to bring forward a motion. Anybody wants to put their hand up, they're more than welcome to do that. But at this time, I am seeing no hands except Councillor Master.
I just think it's better that we deal with this with a motion. It might serve notice to other people who might be thinking the same thing. Okay. And I would, because I have to frame a motion in a positive way, I will.
You don't have to.
Oh, do you not? You don't have to?
No.
Then I move that we do not forgive the late fee for Crazel Corp. Resource and Business Development Consulting.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion to not provide tax relief? No discussion. I'll ask for decision and votes via consensus. All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. No tax relief for Crazel. Thank you very much. Anything else before we go? Nothing? Meeting adjourned, 4:59. Thank you very much. Take care.